A question I get all the time is, how do I get current donors to give more money? And it's not really as hard as most people think it is. And I'm going to share some tried and true methods that I've used over the last 25 years that have helped me raise over $50 million with several nonprofits. And I'm going to show you how to do that here in this video. There's one surefire way to increase your donors' gifts, and I'm going to lay it out in this video. And if you follow these steps, step by step, I can promise you that you will increase your donors' gifts from 10, 25, 50, even 100%. Now, full disclosure, this is not going to happen overnight. But if you properly steward these donors, they will stay at these new higher levels or increase over time. We use these techniques to more than triple our donations over the last few years in a very small market, from 3 million all the way up to 10 million. And as with most of my techniques, you'll look at this and you will say, is that all I have to do? And the answer is yes. It requires intentional actions. And if you find value in this video, I want you to know that I'm on a mission. And that mission is to help nonprofits raise money, whether you're a volunteer or a professional, because my goal is to make this world a better place, one nonprofit at a time. And I'm going to try to do that with these simple methods that I've used over the last 25 years that have gotten me to where I am. And as promised, if you would like the notes to this video, simply send me an email at info@wearenfm.com. That's info@wearenfm.com. Or look down in the description below and it'll give you that information. And if you can vibe with that mission, you can actually help me. You can help me by hitting the like button, by subscribing, and hitting the subscription button so you'll be notified every time I upload a new video. And together we can make this world a better place. I really appreciate it. Now, this is how this video is going to go down. I'm going to show you the best way to help you help your donors give you more money. I'm going to show you what the best strategies and tactics are to do that. I'm also going to show you how to deepen the relationships that you have with your donors. And I'm going to show you how to follow up. And most importantly, I'm going to show you how to do this all over again, because this is a wheel. It has to happen over and over again. And let's do this. Let's jump right in. Now, there is a number one way to do this that I like to do that I've learned over the last 25 years, but there are several wrong ways to try to help your donors give you more money. And one of them is just simply asking for more money. That's not going to do it. Another way is to ask more frequently. That also is not going to do it. And another way that I see a lot of nonprofits do is they will sort of do a tragedy sort of campaign. You know, we call it sort of flies on the face of your clients. And that's not going to do it. And trust me, I've seen many of my clients try to use some of these methods, and they've had little to no effect. And over the last 25 years, I have yet to see a method more effective to help you help your donors give you more money than what I'm about to show you now. Now, everyone's probably wondering, get to the point. What is it? How do you help your donors give you more money? Well, what I'm going to tell you is probably going to sound counterintuitive, but it's not. It actually works. And how you help your donors give you more money is, wait for it, you put them to work. Yes, that's what you do. If you want your donors to give the organization more money, you put them to work. And as I talk about this a little bit more, it'll start making sense and you'll be like, yeah, why didn't I think of that? It makes complete, total sense. Now, obviously, the best way to do that is to bring those donors into the organization. And that means that you're going to have to show them what your actual challenges are, which are also opportunities. And one of the methods is often used is asking donors to serve on the board of directors. That's one way to encourage them to be a part of the organization and give more money. Another method that's often used is serving on the development committee, the fundraising committee. That's a volunteer committee. It's usually led by someone that's on the board, but it brings the donors in and they get to sort of talk about some of the ideas of how to and participate in some of the ideas of how to raise money for the organization. Another method is asking a donor to host a salon at their home. And as I mentioned before in another video, this video connected here, a salon is a small event held in someone's home, and it's a friend raiser, not immediately a fundraiser. Very effective. Another way to encourage a donor to get more involved and to eventually give more money is to help to design a program or review a program. And this is one of my favorite methods because it really sort of brings the donor in and they get to sort of put their hands all over something. They get to see what the organization actually needs and use. And it's kind of a one-off, and it's kind of something that I often use, but it's also more than just the donation, I have to say. It's also they bring in a lot of really good ideas that you wouldn't come across or you wouldn't think of yourself most often. And this can be done in a group or individually. I usually prefer the individual because I'm able to sort of call them and schedule the meeting quite easily. Now, when I need a group, I usually will roll up into the fundraising committee or the development committee, as some people call it. Sticking with the school theme, you can also assign a teacher, you can assign a department. Often you can name buildings after them depending on the size of the organization. Another method that you can use is to assign a donor a specific unit to support at the nonprofit. So say you work at a school, so you can assign them to a specific student's scholarship, for example. They can be responsible, sort of an adopt a student program where they're focused on the gap for that particular student. That increases the involvement of the donor and usually means that they will eventually give more money over time. Now, let me give you the breakdown in much more detail. The first thing that I discussed was asking a donor to be a part of the board of directors. Now, that's a very involved sort of request from a donor. And often you're usually challenged because sometimes they don't have enough time. But if you're able to bring them on board as a board of director, provided that they're a good fit for the board, you're usually much more able to ask them for more money because they know what the organization needs. They sort of get to be able to peek behind the curtain a little bit. They're much more involved. They care about the organization, and they will much more likely to give you more funds. The Mission Advancement Committee is another committee similar to the board of directors, but much more focused on fundraising. And so you can invite a donor to be a part of that committee. And usually, as I mentioned before, the development chair or fundraising chair is a member of the board. So that volunteer does have access to the board and that sort of information coming from the board. And often we use the development committee or the fundraising committee, as some people call it, as a training ground for those individual donors, volunteers to become members of the board. But serving on the fundraising committee does usually mean that the donor will start giving more money because they're much more involved. Another one of my favorite, as I mentioned before, is the salon. If you can get one of your donors to host a friend raiser, a salon in their home, that really deepens the relationship with the organization because they've gone out of their way. They've invited friends, family, and colleagues to come learn about the organization. It's a very effective way. So asking a donor to host a salon is really an effective way to bring them a little bit closer and to help them give more money to the organization. And another method that I like to use to help donors to give more money to the organization, really basically what I'm saying is to help donors get more involved into the organization, which in turn means that they give more money to the organization, is reviewing or designing a program. And usually I will ask a donor that has a specific expertise in a certain area, and we're looking at doing a program in that area, and I will bring them, and I'll call them up and I'll say, hey, Mr. Or Mrs. Donor, we're actually in the process of thinking about this program. And I know you studied this in college and you now do this right now. Would you be willing to help us sort of design this program so that it's as effective as possible for our students? And often the donor usually will say yes if they have the time, because they're giving to the organization already, and so they feel like, hey, they're asking me for my talents as well, and I would love to do that for something really positive. And usually you will get a really sort of a deepened, stronger relationship from that individual, because you'll come up sort of with the outline, you sort of help them, give you the information, you work with them, and then at the end you come up with a nice project that you guys have developed together. And usually after we finish the program, I will then ask the donor, will you, now that we've completed the program and it looks really tight, would you consider a gift of X so we can help get this program off the ground? Or if the donor is capable of funding the whole thing, I'll ask them to, would you consider funding this project so we can get this moving, and then we can share it with some of the other organizations that are around. Bringing them in on a project, current project, or to review a project or a new project is a really powerful way of involving the donor into the organization, which will then help them give more money to the organization. So you're really winning on both ends. You're getting more support from the donor, but you're also getting their talent, their mind, and then you're deepening the relationship with that donor. And another of my favorites is to assign a unit of some sort to the donor. And that could be, sticking with the school theme, that could be a student, that could be a teacher, that could be an administrator, it can be a department, it could be a program. And what you would do is you would just develop a relationship. So let's just stick with the student. So what you might do is assign a student to that particular donor. And then you would have that student write a letter to the donor thanking them for their support. You might want to, at some point, invite the donor down to meet that student. And then they can track that student along as that student matriculates through the school. You can do the same thing with a teacher, a department. It's really another, I would say it's a mid-level way of getting a donor to give more money. That for us, or for many nonprofits, that would be somewhere around the $10,000 level to sort of get them in that level, maybe $20,000 level. But if you're trying to get them to give at a higher level, that's when you bring them into sort of the projects, where they're reviewing a program like I was talking about before, or serving on the board, something to that effect. But a more mid-level, it's really good to assign a unit of the organization. If you're a animal rights organization, you might want to assign them an animal. So just like that, just think of units of the organization that you're able to break it down, easily track, and then connect that donor to that unit of the organization. A very powerful way, but a lower level, getting them up, moving them up through the moves management sort of tract. And then after you've used a few of these different techniques and strategies with the donor, after they've given you their talent or their time, then you can ask them, would you consider a gift for such and such? And they've deepened their relationship. It's much more than just getting a newsletter here, an annual report there, maybe going to the gala. Now they're participating in the success of the organization. They're now rolling up their sleeves, and they're now involved a little bit more. And so you can ask for a little bit more because they're involved more. You're probably wondering, does this work? And so let me just give you a quick little, and I have many of these, but I'll just give you one little case study. A few years ago, we had a donor. She came in and she started giving us $10,000. And, that's not a small amount of money. And we were very happy with that. But we realized she was capable of doing a bit more than that. So but at the time we assigned her a student. Let's stick to the school thing. We assigned her a student, and she gave $10,000. They exchanged letters back and forth. And the next year we asked her, hey, why don't you look at, I know that you majored in biology. Why don't you look at supporting one of our teachers in our biology department. She loved the idea. And so I said, well, why don't you come down and meet one I think that you would be very interested in, and have lunch and see if there's something. She brought her down. It was fantastic. They vibed immediately. They got along. And the next thing you know, she's now given $20,000 to the school. She's not only supporting the student, she's now supporting the teacher. A few years later, I brought her down and I said, hey, the biology department is looking at running a STEM program that's going through our math department, our engineering department, as well as the biology department. Would you be interested in looking at and helping us design it? She said, sure. She came in, she had a biology background. She came in, she looked at it. She actually provided a lot of resources for us to do research on. It was fantastic. And then at the end of it, we realized that the program was going to cost us about $100,000 on an annual basis. And so I went to her once again. And I said, hey, we really appreciated your support on this. The program looks fantastic. Would you consider a gift of $100,000 annually for the next 5 years to support this program? She paused and she said, well, that's a little bit more than I was thinking. I need to talk it over with my husband. And she did that. And she ended up coming back to us, signing a pledge for $100,000 a year. She's increased it over the last few years. And it's been great. So really, when I tell you, if you want to help your donors give you more financial support to the organization, which in turn gives you more talent to your organization, put them to work. I'm telling you, that is the way you do it. Now, the follow-up is equally as important. As I mentioned before, you have to follow up with your donors. So once you brought them in at these higher levels and much more engagement with the organization, you have to follow up consistently, at least on a monthly basis. Whether you send them a document, you give them a phone call, you meet them for lunch or for coffee, you have to follow up. You have to continue to steward the support of these donors so they continue to feel good about what they're doing with the organization. And then if you continue to do that, as I mentioned earlier, not only will they either stay at these giving levels, as I mentioned with you just a moment ago with that case study, they will start giving even more money because they feel much more engaged with the organization because it's now become a part of them. They are a part of the support. They are a part of the success for this organization now because you've brought them into the family. And I know you know what I'm going to say next. Guess what? You have to start all over again. And so once I brought in Mrs. Supporter, as I said before, she came in at the $10,000 level. I then brought her up to the $20,000 level. Then I brought her up to the $100,000 level. So you need to start this all over again. So once the first project you give them is over, you then start all over again. You say, Mr. and Mrs. such and such, thank you for such and such. Look, it's doing so great. Isn't that fantastic? We now have another project that we would like your attention to. Do you have the time? And then if they say yes, you get going and you start this all over again. And you're just keeping them engaged with something that they find important, and you keep moving them along, deepening the relationship with them and the organization. Does that sound hard? No. And as promised, if you would like the notes to this video, simply send me an email at info@wearenfm.com. That's info@wearenfm.com. Or look down in the description below and it'll give you that information. And please join me on my mission to help make this world a better place. And you can do that by liking us, by subscribing to us, by ringing the bell, and finally by sharing this video. Share this video with other fundraisers who you think that it might help. Thank you. And as always, thank you for taking the time to watch our videos, and look for the next one next week.